Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Living Intentionally, the podcast about purposeful living, aligning actions with values. This is episode number 7. I'm your host, Sandra Lee Branch, and each week we explore stories and strategies and insights to inspire you. We want to discover the tools and motivation to live a life of purpose, one intentional step at a time. Today, I am so excited because I have with us my dear friend, Mandy Minick. Mandy Minick is the principal owner of her own public relations firm. She has been a reporter for the Warren Tribune Chronicle, covering local government and businesses, press secretary for the Ohio Senate, communications director for a nonprofit association representing Ohio's small businesses, and press secretary and chief communication officer for the Ohio Department of Education. In addition to communications, Mandy has a passion for health care and well-being. She is a licensed registered nurse who spent more than 5 years in patient care at Ohio State University's James Cancer Hospital. Since founding Minick Public Relations in 2022, Mandy has been privileged to work with more than 24 clients ranging from public entities to private businesses, from for-profit organizations to charitable nonprofits, and from larger organizations with more than 1,000 employees to one-person startups. Welcome, Mandy. Thank you for being here. So excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Sandra. Same. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. So Mandy and I worked together 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. Was it
Something like
longer?
that. Yeah, about three.
Yeah, so I was the HR director, chief talent officer for one of the state agencies where we initially met. And Mandy was our communications director. And I went to Mandy for a lot of different things, all things communications. And I'm so excited to have had the privilege and opportunity and honor to meet you, and that we've maintained contact all this time. I've learned a lot from Mandy, and she's been kind of a source of not only inspiration, but guidance and uh, counsel for myself as I kind of delve into this digital communication world. So, but thank you for being here. Let's talk a little bit about your story and how you got started in entrepreneurship, because I think that's I came to you because I'm like, ah. So talk a little bit about your start there.
Yeah. Well, first, I would like to say too that I definitely went to you a lot when we were colleagues at the department, and you were such a help to me in all things leadership and just people leading and learning how to manage different personalities, different work styles, different communication styles. You were a real treasure trove of information. So for folks that are listening to Sandra, you've got a great resource here.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, my entrepreneurial, how I got started. Let's see. I was thinking about this, and that I I've always kind of I've come from an entrepreneurial family. My parents both were very entrepreneurial. They both had regular jobs, but they always had what we would now call side hustles. Both of them, my mom and my dad. My mom is very artistic and creative and crafty, and would paint things and create things and just sell them, and craft shows or just various things for people. My dad kind of has this engineering mind where he had actually a canoe business where he built boats that were very fast in the water, and had a really good business selling boats that he made. And they always encouraged my brother and I to think of ways to do something that gave us joy, and that pride of having created something, and then also the pride of making a little money on the side having sold it. So I was baking and selling Christmas cookies as a kid, made Christmas decorations and ornaments and things and sold those. So it's just something always done. And this public relations business that I started just about 3 years ago is one in a long line of different side hustles. I used to make wedding cakes and birthday cakes, things like that. I had a business doing that for a while, probably about, gosh, almost 20 years ago now. So it's just something that's come as second nature because I think I was raised in that atmosphere where it was just this the thought process was, okay, now that you've, learned to do something, always looking for new skills, learning to acquire new skills and new abilities, and then once you've mastered that, figure out a way to monetize it. So
Wow, that's fantastic. And so, wow, our I can relate to you. That resonates with me because I think I've always had this like entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, my grandparents, now when I think about it, and I've said this before, my grandparents were sharecroppers. My grandfather worked for himself. He sold tobacco. And my grandmother, she did a lot of sewing, and she was also, cleaning people's houses, and so that's how
mhm.
they made a lot of their money. For you though, you like me, I've kind of dabbled in like some of the multi-level marketing industries, and now doing the coaching. What was the aha moment for you that made you realize that public relations was where you wanted to land?
I so well, let's see. A couple different times. I don't think it was for me just one light bulb moment. You kind of have to, as you're moving through life, you sort of have to pay attention to the cues that you're being given,
Hmm.
and you don't always see them the first time. You don't always catch it the second time, but thankfully, life kind of keeps throwing it up in your face until you finally are like, oh. I always liked writing. It was something I really enjoyed, and when I was in high school and things, did the student newspaper and all that. But then didn't think that reporting and journalism was really where I wanted to go. So I took this path of doing a communications major that I thought would kind of be more general and more broad, but still kind of encompass that. And I wasn't even a full year into this communications major when I realized like I'm not doing enough writing and I really want to write. So that's when I added the journalism back in.
Hmm.
But that
Hmm.
was very important for me to realize that I do like writing, and I want whatever I do, I want to be able to write. And then fast forward maybe 20 some years when I'm working in different places, doing different things. And I did communications, I did some journalism. Then I switched, I went into nursing. And I'd start a job and I'd be happy for about a year while I was learning and it was new and it was challenging. And as soon as it became kind of routine, I
Hmm.
would get unhappy and
Hmm.
I'd get very restless. And I started to realize this about myself, that I like to think I'm a good employee, in that if I work for you and you ask me to do something, I'm not going to make you ask me twice. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try to get it done quickly, on time, and to a high standard. But I am eventually going to start resenting you. And it's not anything you did. It's
Right.
the fact that I am selling you my life. I'm selling
Yeah.
you my waking living hours, that
Oh
I'm selling
my.
you my autonomy.
Yeah.
And if I have to sell my autonomy, I will become resentful. So it was that I want to write. I want to write on my terms. It took a long time to piece those two things together, to
Yeah.
realize that you really need to just be writing on your own terms
Yeah.
in order to have
That's
the level of
so good. That's so good. So really it was really about like self-discovery, self-awareness, and really embracing like this is what really brings me joy. And embracing that and not dismissing it.
Yeah, and it's like piecing these clues together, like I had the writing very early. I had that part down, but then I had moved to the nursing part because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And so then I did that, but then that wasn't fully scratching the itch either. And
Yeah.
then I went back to communications, and that's when I think I realized the problem here is not what you're doing. The problem here is the fact that you don't feel like you have license over your life.
That
So
time freedom.
yes, if I can write, and if the stuff I write helps people, and if I
Mhm.
can do it in a way that I feel that I have license, then I'm going to be as close to content as I can.
Yeah, yeah. So besides your family, were there others in your life along your journey that inspired you on this entrepreneurial path?
Absolutely. Because it's scary. You think once you put those pieces together and you're like, okay, what I think I need to do is I need to go out on my own.
Mhm.
It's how can I be sure that it's going to work? And you can't. But the closest I came, there was well, first of all, when you tell people like, look, I'm thinking about doing this, you tell your friends and things, it's amazing how many people want to help you. And they immediately start telling you, who you need to talk to is so-and-so. Let me connect you with them.
Oh, that's great.
And that happened for me. One of my friends said to me, you need to talk to a gentleman named Jim Lynch. And I've talked to Jim several times on the phone. I've met him in person exactly one time. I don't think he'll ever realize the impact he had on me, because when I was feeling so apprehensive, I spoke to him. He does what I do. And so he's, you know, miles down the road from where I was starting in this journey. But from miles down the road, he spoke to me and said, it's going to be okay. He said, Mandy, there's more than enough work out here. We're more collaborative than we are competitive, the folks who are doing this. He kept telling me, there's got to be ways you and I can work together. He essentially said to me, jump in, the water's fine. And if you're the person standing on the precipice of starting your own business, when you hear that, that's kind of all you need,
Yeah, yeah. It
So,
is scary. I think it is scary for a lot of people. I don't know if you've ever heard Myron Golden's The Four Levels of Value. I'll share that with you in just a few moments, but I think it's scary for people because that first level of value that he talks about is being an individual contributor, and you're the person doing the work, but you have a cap, like you have a starting salary, say, whatever it is, and it goes up to maybe 80 or to six figures. That's
mhm,
your cap. And so to your point, you're kind of trading your time for whatever they're paying you per hour. And then
mhm,
there's that second level of what he calls unification. That's when you go from being the individual contributor to being the supervisor. So now you're not the person actually doing the work, you're the person getting the work done through the people, and your salary goes up a little bit more. I think
mhm,
what happens is once you get to this communication level where you're almost like at double six figures, you have these golden handcuffs on. And in the back of your mind, you're like, I want to step out and do my own thing, but can I make what I'm making here? Like
mhm,
you're trading your 8 hours or more for
mhm,
whatever they're paying you in those six figures, but you're still giving up your time. To your point, you're trading time for money. You're selling your time during the course of
mhm.
the day. You don't have that autonomy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you say to people who still feel like the water is fine? Come on, the water is fine.
I I'll have to tell you though, Sandra, as an entrepreneurial evangelist, I don't know that I've gotten any converts. But I have so many friends who I feel are in these corporate positions. I have so many friends who are in these positions where they just work and work, and to varying degrees of misery. Some of
Yeah,
them are like, this stinks, I hate it, blah, 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 but they move on. I have other
yeah.
people that I know that cry every day and hate their life. And it crushes my soul, because I just like, you you have more to offer this world.
Mm,
You have skills
mm,
and abilities that other people don't have, that you could do something. I truly believe you could make a life for yourself where you achieve some level of contentment outside of this corporate structure and outside of those golden handcuffs that you're talking about.
mhm.
But I've yet to convince somebody to jump off the diving board with me.
What do you think it is? Fear of being out there by themselves, or fear of I'm not gonna make what I'm making now? Fear of change, fear of what family members might say.
100%, all of that. And I don't know
Yeah,
which fear, probably for different people, different fears take precedence.
yeah,
I do think that they have become accustomed to a certain lifestyle that their salary is affording them,
that's true.
and they are afraid of trading off, because I definitely took a step back money wise when I left, my 9 to 5. And it was hard for a while there. And I was living on savings, and I was worried, what if it runs out? But eventually, the idea is that you will build back up, and that you will actually maybe even exceed where you would have been had you stayed on the corporate track. But
Mm,
even if not, even if you just get back to a place where your head's above water, you're comfortable, and you don't hate your existence, I figure that's a win, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. How do you stay motivated during those tough times?
So I've been continually delighted and surprised in this journey that new client, you never know where a new client is coming from. You never know where that new business is going to come from. And that is a motivating thought for me because there's eternally hope. Like there's always concern and question because you
Yeah.
don't have a regular paycheck coming. So you're like,
Yeah.
is it, but you always have that hope. And I'll give you this quick example. So the first 6 months that I was out on my own, it was very bleak. And I was, just walking in faith that this was going to work out. And I had some time on my hands because I didn't have any work to do. And my church does a lot of service projects. And so I signed up to do this service project there's a drop-in center here in town for homeless teens and youth. And they had gotten a big donation from one of the large retailers, a big donation of shirts and t-shirts and sweatshirts and just clothing for the kids that come to the drop-in center, but it wasn't sorted, it wasn't folded. So the drop-in center contacted my church to see if some volunteers would come down and sort and fold the clothing. So I raised my hand, and I didn't know anybody. I just went by myself. I just, had, like I said, time on my hands. So I'm standing there with other people folding clothes. And anyway, the person standing beside me, we got to chatting, and they became my first client. And
Wow.
I didn't see that coming. I just thought I was down here trying to be helpful and do something good with all the free time I had.
Wow. Give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. How has your faith or your personal values influenced your approach to business now and your leadership?
I throughout my life, I feel that throughout my walk with God, throughout my faith journey, from the very beginning, I feel like if God has told me one thing over and over, it is that I need to trust him with money.
Mm.
And when I had first really started my faith journey, I came from a firmly middle class family in that, say, like, my parents were going to make it possible for me to go to college, but they were not making it possible for me to take spring break trips or study abroad or any of this. It
Right.
was like, no, we're going to get you a degree, and that's about as good as we can do, which was great and huge. But there was an organization on campus that was taking these mission trips during spring break.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt compelled to try to take one of these mission trips, but I didn't have the money and I couldn't ask my parents for the money. And, I just sort of stepped out on faith that, okay, maybe if I'm supposed to do it, it'll work, and kind of put the word out to a couple different groups and my home church, things like that. And they had these different deadlines whereby you had to, like you had to have your passport by this date, you had to have the down payment by this date. And every time one of those dates came up, the money that I needed showed up in the exact amount that I
Wow.
needed it. Like, blew me away to the
I
point
just
that
got chills.
it was
Yeah.
really wild. And I just felt like, that, okay, God was saying, like, and you probably know the scripture better than me, but it's, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hillsides. Like,
Mhm.
he's gonna, if he wants you to do this, he's going to make a way for you to do it. You fast forward, I don't even know how many years, when I decided I was going to go to nursing school. And that was a big deal because basically I quit my job. I had a mortgage, I had a car payment, quit my job. So stopped making money and took on tuition on top of that.
Wow. Wow.
And made it through that whole season of being in school, getting my degree, started a job at the James, and was going to be paying back the loans that I had taken out. And I received in the mail one day a check for a large sum of money that basically paid off. It was less than $20,000, but still, like, it's a lot of money. It's a life-changing amount of money for somebody like me. The exact amount of money I needed to pay off those loans. And it was a cashier's check that just said, I know what you're doing, and God's going to provide for you because you're trying
Wow.
to do. And I still don't know who sent me that money. Could have been a patient, could have been a family member, could have been I have no idea.
Wow.
But I just felt like God has said to me, like, smacked me in the face with this, like, if I'm calling you to do it, I'm going to provide.
Yeah.
So when I came to this conclusion that I needed to start my own business, even though it looked super bleak for about 6 months or even maybe 9 months, I kept thinking, like, I really think this is what you want me to do. I really feel like this is what I've been called to do. And I have to believe that you're going to you're going to come through for me. And
Yeah.
of course he did. And it felt like at some point, it was like, at this point in my life, to not believe him would be, I don't know what the word is. Like, it would be
Mhm.
stupid to not trust God
Mhm.
with money at this point, because he's
Yeah.
been so blatant about it in my
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of it. Also, as far as like my values and things, I think I have left organizations when I have not felt aligned their with their ethos, with their beliefs. I have left because, my job, typically, not so much in nursing, but typically my job is being a spokesperson. And if I'm trying to, give an interview or speak on behalf of an employer, and I am not aligned with what that employer is saying, that's going to come through you're going to see that I am not enthusiastic about what I'm saying. And in fact, I don't believe what I'm saying. I actually
Mhm.
believe the opposite. That's going to reflect even worse on my organization.
Wow.
So when I'm not in alignment, it's better for everybody if I just leave.
Yeah.
And so now I get to work with organizations where I exclusively know, like, I'm aligned with what you're doing and I am on board and I want to help. And when I speak, it's going to be genuine and it's going to be enthusiastic, because it aligns with the values that I have in my core.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because I think what you're saying is being authentic to yourself, being authentic and true to your own core values, and making sure that they're in lockstep with whoever you work with or whomever you work for. Talk a
Mhm.
little bit about how important that is, just as human beings.
I think it is so vitally important. And I don't know, hmm, I think back to different jobs I've had. I'm not going to name people or employers, but it just, there are things that have made, like I said, I can get very miserable in a job as an employee, because I feel like I've sold my autonomy. Also because I am not aligned with where they're going, what they're doing, what they're saying. Um, and those two things there will combine to make you a very miserable human.
Mm.
And I've walked that. I have been in that valley. I've been in that dark, dark place for many years at times in my life. And it's not fun. It's no way to go through life. I think of friends that I know who are working corporate jobs, that I see them internally trying to deny their values in order to stay in this position that pays them so much money. And you see that struggle. Like, you can just see somebody in their face, in their actions, in their words. You can just see the struggle. And I hope to not have to be in that struggle again. And I think that, kind of picking up these pieces throughout my life, trying to look back and learn from where I've been, I think that I've identified some of the things that are really core to who I am. And one of them is that, I want what I do to be helpful. I want it
Yeah.
to be positive. And what that means to me might be different than what it means to other people, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. And literally what happens, I think, when you see it, you see like that person's spirit just
Yes.
being kind of snuffed out. Their light that they might have in their life is slowly just dimming because they're in a space that doesn't bring them joy, and they're not being authentic and true to themselves.
Or do you
So
see people being frustrated and
yeah,
they honestly almost can't even put their finger on why they're frustrated, but I
yeah,
can see it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Minick Public Relations. What services do you offer?
So a lot of what I do a lot of writing. So press releases. I love doing speech writing, especially if it's something I can get real excited about. And newsletters. Do a lot of column, editorial, op-ed writing, things like that. Letters to the editor, different just letters that people need written. Help people write reports. But I also do a lot of that, traditional public relations. So media relations. I do media training where I help people learn, people who are going to be on camera, or people who are maybe the face of an organization, a CEO or a communications director or a press secretary, trying to give those folks the tips and tools for very practical things about how to do an interview. What do you do with your hands? What colors should you wear if you're going to be on camera? What do you do with your face? What happens when they ask you a question you don't know the answer to? How do you pivot? Very just practical nuts and bolts things for giving an interview that portrays the image you want to portray. So I do those trainings, but I also help people with social media content because that's a huge thing right now. A lot of my clients are small to medium nonprofits, again, that have missions that I really get aligned with and get excited about. And those folks are very busy doing the day-to-day of trying to run those nonprofits and do that good work. I'd like to take the burden of creating content and continually keeping up with social media. I'd like to take that burden off their back. So I handle that for them, and then they can focus on doing their work. And that's something that I've found has been helpful for folks, because people will a lot of times start an organization with a skill that they can offer or a service that they can offer. And then they find themselves weighed down by, oh, and I have to be posting and I have to be creating content. And I can say, let me just take that off of your back so that you can focus where you need to focus.
And there's so many different platforms now. I even know for myself, like, okay, so you've got TikTok, which I started and couldn't keep up with. Then you got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got LinkedIn, and probably some others that I don't even know about. But so social media is playing a huge role in your marketing efforts. But what platforms for you or for your clients have been the most impactful?
So you really have to think about who you're trying to speak to, because different people are going to be in different places for different reasons. I actually heard somebody recently who does what I do and is very good at it. I'm not questioning this person's capabilities at all. But they were saying, LinkedIn, nobody goes there. Nobody. I personally, for my business, that's the only place for Minick Public Relations that I'm really doing any kind of marketing or promotion. And it's been super helpful for me, mostly because the audience that I'm trying to reach does go there. They go there and they are keeping tabs on people. And so I've used that quite a bit. And that's just where my network is. And I mean, Sandra, we have a similar network, being,
Yeah.
the industries we've come from. Those folks are on LinkedIn and they're checking in every so often. And so when you're putting things up there, that's a great way of letting them. And these are also people who I know professionally, but they're not necessarily Facebook friends of
Yeah.
mine,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's been great for me. But, some of my clients, especially the nonprofits and things, we're focusing more on Facebook. Most of them are still doing a lot of Facebook because they're more community facing. Some of their audiences are a little bit older, and those folks tend to, they've gotten the hang of Facebook and they hang out there. So that's an easy way to reach them. But Instagram as well, I don't do a lot of the video platforms. It's just not, it's not a good fit for the clients that I'm working with. But there are some clients where that is going to be where you want to be. It just is a matter of who you're trying to reach and what message you're trying to get across.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think I do Facebook because that's where my community is and
Mm-hmm.
it's safe for
Yeah.
a long time. So I'm just now starting to dabble into LinkedIn. I think partly for me it was because of the roles that I was in, and
Mm-hmm.
I was probably a little fearful of, backlash or whatever comments or just public
Yeah.
criticism. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just put it out there, public criticism. I'm getting a little bit beyond that now as I get older and realize that I need to settle into who I am. What advice would you give someone who is just starting out and they're considering becoming this entrepreneur or this solopreneur, but they have this
Mm-hmm.
fear or they're hesitating and they're just not really sure?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're not so locked into their job. Maybe they don't even have a job, but they want to step out. What advice would you share with somebody who's at that point?
Yeah, something I heard, I don't want to take credit, but I don't remember who I heard saying this, but they said something about not wanting to be seen trying. And that really spoke to me when I heard that, because again, like my friends, I feel like that are frustrated in their jobs and they can't pinpoint why. Sometimes you'll have these feelings and these conflicts, but you can't pinpoint exactly what it is, or where the conflict is there. And I think for a lot of people, that is where the conflict is. They have
Mhm.
this idea, they would like to pursue the idea, but their pride, and they, you don't want to call it that. That's maybe why you can't identify
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
But you don't want to put yourself out there because there's a chance that it might not work. And if it doesn't work, then all the people that you put yourself out there in front of will know that it failed, that you
Yeah.
failed,
Hmm.
and you don't want that. That sounds very embarrassing and kind of, mortifying to people. And they're afraid that they're going to be seen trying, and that trying may not actually end up working out the way they want it to. And I think that this is one of the great things about living in the United States, because I know in Europe, at least I've heard, the culture there is it's very shameful if you try to do something and it fails. In the United States, all we do is try stuff and fail. Like
Right.
that is the American spirit, is just like, well, give it a shot, like. And
Yeah.
one of my friends, I love this to this day, is one of my favorite things she ever said. We were talking in a group with friends of ours that were a couple who were thinking about starting this little business together. And at the time they didn't have any kids, and they were, kind of bouncing this idea off of us. And my friend said to them, she goes, you know what, at the end of the day, you guys are either you're going to start this business, and you're either going to say, it turns into this great family business and you pass it down to your kids generation, and it's a great thing. Or you'll be sitting around a table, 5 or 10 years from now saying, hey, remember that time we quit our jobs and started that business? That was funny, and move on.
Right.
And
Right.
and that's all it has to be. That's all it has
Yeah.
to be. Remember that time we tried that thing and it didn't work?
Yeah.
Move
Yeah.
on. It's
Yeah.
it's not the catastrophe that we make it out to be. So I would say to people, get out of your head about that. Aside, it is not it is not the
Uh-oh.
catastrophe that you think it
Yeah.
will be if it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
So
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if I cut out there, but it's
Yeah.
just not going to be as devastating as you maybe are making it up to be in your mind if it doesn't
Yeah.
work. Americans
Yeah.
try things, fail, get back up, try again. And there's no shame in that. In fact, people actually really admire that at the end of the day, because most of them wish they had the nerve to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple of things that come to my mind. Number one, the pain of regret
Yeah.
of not trying, right?
Yeah.
And number two, what really spoke to me was it's not about you. It's about who you're serving.
Mhm.
And number three, John Maxwell says, fail fast, fail often, and fail often, oh, and fail forward.
Yeah.
Keep failing until you get to where you need to be. So I
Yeah.
love that. Any books or tools or resources that you would recommend for any aspiring entrepreneur or solopreneur?
I so I can't say I can think of a book per se. One thing that is huge is join organizations. I've joined the National Association of Women Business Owners. That's been amazing. I've joined my local business association here in my neighborhood. That's been wonderful. I have joined Ohio Women in Government. They have provided me so many opportunities. Be a joiner. Even I am not an outgoing person by nature, but join organizations and make a rule. I will have coffee with anybody, and be the one that initiates coffee sometimes. People want
Mm,
to help you, but if they
mhm.
don't know you, they're not going to be able to help you. So meet people, go ahead and
Yeah.
get out of your comfort zone and just meet people. You're not selling, you're just telling them what you do and asking them what they do. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And they want to help you, and you think you want to help other people too in your core of cores. So when, Sandra, you tell me what you're doing and I tell you what I'm doing, the first thing that I know goes through your brain is who can I connect Mandy with? And the same thing's going through my brain, like what can I offer to Sandra that's going to help her on her journey, because I want her to succeed. And that's how this stuff grows. That's how connections are made. That's how you get client relationships and customers.
Yeah. I love that. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your business and how to do work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website. It's Minick, MINICK, PR, as in public relations.com. So MINICKPR.com. You can find all of my contact information, my bio, all of the services we provide. I actually even have a bunch of resources on there. So I'm giving away for free. If you were my client, this is the advice I would give you. There's a lot of that on there, just free for the taking. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can look for Minick Public Relations, or you can look for Amanda Minick and find me that way. And, I do have a Twitter, but I don't really put much on there. So basically, go to my website, find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect.
I completely forgot about Twitter.
X, sorry, it's X.
Oh, yeah, it is X now. Mandy, thank you so much, so much. I really appreciate you. I think that your talk today is going to be very helpful to somebody out there who is still struggling, kind of like waffling the line as to whether do I jump or not jump. And so thank you for sharing your experience and giving us hope and inspiring all of us. We are going to close out now. We will be back next week. We'll see you then. And until then, have a beautiful weekend and a beautiful Saturday. Talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.